I'm Evren Yildirim. Welcome to the introduction session of Regenerative Landscapes and Permaculture Design Certificate course. In this session, Sheena and I, as the instructors of this course, will be briefly talking about the topics of the course and how the course is organized, the certificate course. And first of all, let me introduce myself. I will talk in the first section of this session, then I will give the floor to Sheena. I'm a permaculture designer from Turkey. I got my design certificate from Permaculture Research Institute of Turkey. I studied agriculture, gardening. I went to Jordan and worked in Greening the Desert project. And then I went to New Zealand for an internship in Koanga Institute. I studied biointensive farming and growing nutrient-dense food. Then I come back. I started working with PRI of Turkey as an instructor. I am the co-founder of Ormanaltı Permaculture Consultancy, and I'm also partner of ECODEMIA Urban Permaculture Initiative. That's me briefly. And let me just talk about permaculture and our course. I would like to start with the words of Bill Mollison. Bill Mollison is the co-founder of permaculture. He's also known as the father of permaculture. He said that though the problems of the world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. For the 90% of this course, and also today, we will be talking about this embarrassingly simple solutions. That is to say, we will be talking about permaculture concepts and design principles and design methodology. And the remaining 10% of the course, and also today, is to discuss the current state of the world, to talk about our increasingly complex problems. This is also important to talk about problems because it reminds us why we need more and more permaculture designers every day. One of our problems is pollution. You name it: nuclear pollution, chemical pollution, air pollution, ocean pollution, noise pollution. There are lots of pollutions, and pollution is one of the biggest killers in the world now. Every year, more than millions of people die due to pollution, and more than 100 millions of mammals die every year due to pollution. Another problem is deforestation. You can also call it the removal of ecosystems. According to WWF, every minute we lose the size of 30 football fields of forests. And mostly this is happening in the rainforest, in the ecosystem of the rainforests. These ecosystems are the systems that regulate the climate in our planet. And they are the cradle of biodiversity, and we are losing them minute by minute. And our most important problem today on our planet is the soil degradation. It's the decline in soil living conditions, decline in soil health conditions. Soil is alive and it's dying, to say it shortly. Earth, our planet, builds this living soil, 5 centimeters of this top living soil in every 1,000 years. And we've been destroying this 5 centimeters in every 80 years. So you see, this is not sustainable, and we are coming to an end. Why soil is so important? Soil is also the most important topic in permaculture. We'll be talking about soils a lot. Because losing soils means losing the base resource that supplies our primal need, which is feeding, food. And we now see millions of people are suffering from hunger due to soil loss, and it's happening all around the world. Maybe you heard this term Anthropocene. It means the age of humans. Our impact on this planet is so huge. Now some scientists call this age the age of humans. And the primary attribute of this age is the loss of biodiversity. And we are seeing severe weather events more and more every day, like flood, hurricanes, drought, dust storms. Unfortunately, we will be seeing them more and more. We will be seeing more diseases spreading around the world. You see this map on the right. It's from carbonbrief.org. The red spots are the severe weather events that has been caused by human activity last year. So you see it's nearly every dot is red. And maybe you heard of the Earth Overshoot Day. Earth Overshoot Day is the day on which the humans' use of Earth's resources for a year exceed that year's Earth's resource generation capacity. So it should be at least 31st of December, but it was in last year 2020, it was the August 22, and the date is coming to an earlier date every year. And some people say that the sixth mass extinction is on the way, so we are under great danger. I know this is all bad stuff. It's obvious that if we want to keep on living on this planet, we have to do something. But as we say, problem is the solution. All of these things, all of these terrible, horrifying things, we can stop, we can reverse, and we can repair everything. All we need to do is make a choice, and permaculture is that choice. So let's talk about permaculture. And I'll be using Bill Mollison's quote during my presentation also. And he says there is one and only one solution, and we have almost no time to try it. So these alarming situations, talking about these alarming situations is just to show you that we have no time. We should start acting now. So what is permaculture? Its concept has been developed in the 70s by Bill Mollison and his colleague David Holmgren. It's an interdisciplinary earth science. It aims to find holistic and positivistic solutions to global human problems. And the first course was taught in 1979. And since then, there has been thousands of designers have taken this course and working all around the world. Permaculture, the definition of permaculture is it's an ethical, sustainable design science. We will be talking about this a lot in our course. But just take a quick look at what the word means, because you can see it's two Latin words coming together. Permanence and cultura, it's forming permaculture. Permanence means persisting indefinitely, and cultura is as in cultivation or in agriculture. Also, another definition of culture is the customs, arts, and social institutions of people. So we can read permaculture as a sustainable agriculture system, and we can also read permaculture as practices that sustain human habitation on this planet. So it's basically have this multiple meanings to the word. And also to understand what permaculture is, another important concept is sustainability. A sustainable system produces more energy than it consumes. This definition also defines how the ecosystems functions. Ecosystems functions, they function sustainably. So in permaculture, we explore the function of ecosystems and we apply them into our design. So we will be observing the function of ecosystems and using them to define our methods to design. But bear in mind now, because of the damage we've done to the earth is so much, sustainability is our minimum requirement. We need to regenerate. We need to put more effort on sustainability. We need to design regenerative landscape to regenerate our planet, our society, and also our economies. There is always the economic side to this design also. And how we will build these systems? We will use concepts and principles and methods of permaculture design. I'll just give you a short brief of what some of the principles and concepts we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about natural systems, functional design. We will be talking about a lot because our primary interest as permaculture designers is in the relationship between elements that we use in our designs, the relationships and how they interact with each other. And in this context, we will redefine pollution, waste, resource, and yield. Because in nature, in ecosystems, there is no waste, there is no pollution, there are only resources. We will talk about diversity because diversity is related to stability. But we will talk about diversity as the number of useful connections that we can make between the elements of our design. We will be talking about designing these relations. Patterns is another important issue. Bill Mollison says pattern is a design and design is the subject of permaculture. So we will be talking about pattern and how using nature's wisdom and how understanding patterns is a really powerful tool in your design. And while we were talking about patterns, we were talking about energy flows, how to catch it, conserve it, and web of life and holistic solutions to our problems. And energy is another important issue for us. Energy accounting, we call it, and energy efficient planning is key to permaculture design methodology. We will talk about maps, of course. When we talk about design, we talk about maps, but how to use them. But we will also talk about how to use our intuition, how to observe our environment, how to infer, and how to interact. We will analyze elements of the design in terms of their relations to each other and try to connect them in a functional way. And we will analyze and design the energies that are in our control in our site. We will do zone planning to decide where can we put things for them to function energy efficiently. And we will also talk about forces of natures in sector planning, talk about forces that are outside of our control and how we can not control them, but how we can work with them. We will also talk about it. The scope of permaculture is wide. And I think it's the beauty of it. Its principles, they work everywhere, in every climate, in every soil type, and they work in every scale. You can apply them to a village, to a city, or to a tiny backyard or a tiny balcony. You can apply them in every scale. And I'll talk about these tangible components we will be covering in design, like site components, energy components, design elements, but there is also intangible side to permaculture design. We have to take into account intangible components like social components, people, culture, finance, trade, politics. We will also talk about them in the last chapter. And also ethics. We will be talking about ethics because no permaculture definition is complete with talking about without talking about its ethics. It's an ethical design science, and when we say it's an ethical design science, we really mean it. These three ethical principles: care of the earth, care of people, and return of the surplus, they are cornerstones of permaculture. And we gauge our behavior, we gauge our designs all the time by this, through the lens of these ethical principles. So that was what I will going to cover in the course. Of course, there are lots of other stuff. Sheena will be talking about some of them. Permaculture's design course is based on the book written by Bill Mollison. It's called the Permaculture, a Designer's Manual. It's a really thick book with 14 chapters. So we will be talking about all those chapters in our course. And this is our course outline. You can see it on our website. We will have 4 hours of online sessions. These will be interactive sessions. You will have time for Q&A, and you will also receive weekly learning material via Google Classroom. You will have homeworks to complete in your own time, and we expect you to join collaborative teamwork and discussions, weekly discussions throughout these 4 weeks. And a key part of this course is the design brief and the design exercise project. It's the requirement for a successful completion of this course, but please, no worries, this is not a test. It's not a test, not an exam, definitely. It's just an exercise. We will be providing you with feedback and support throughout this process. Please see it as an opportunity to apply what you have learned in this course. And this is all I will be talking about, what we will tell you during the course. And in my last, I think 5 minutes, I would like to talk about what this course would lead you. But bear in mind, please, for all of the things that I'm gonna tell you about now, you don't have to have a permaculture design certificate. It's not a prerequisite for all these things that I will tell you, but it's just to show you some examples. What do permaculturalists do all around the world? First of all, when you get to know what permaculture is, you will be giving a brand new meaning to everything all around you. And I can tell you that there is no turning back, and this defines my own experience with this course. You will be seeing patterns all around you. You will be thinking about energy efficiency. You will be more positive. You will be more about solutions, and you will see challenges as opportunities. And this will make you happy. If it doesn't do anything else, this will make you happy as a human being, and you will start to have a positive impact on your environment also. And you can work as a teacher or a consultant. You can work in schools with students. You can involve in community projects. You can set up your own community project for your own neighborhood. You can work in institutes as a consultant or as a permaculture teacher. You can also design your own or your family's or your friends' property or even garden. It can be very small. You don't have to have a lot of money. Permaculture principles will help you to design a home system that thrives like a ecosystem that produces yield, saves energy and money, and eliminates waste. To my left, you see Abla's Garden, Jordan. I had the opportunity to meet this wonderful woman, and she has this small garden in the middle of Dead Sea Valley near the Greening the Desert project. And you see how green she made her garden with applying permaculture design principles. You can design farms. This is Jeff Lawton's farm from Australia. He is the head of Permaculture Research Institute of Australia. These are some other examples of farm and eco-village designs, one from Australia, Europe, one from Turkey, and an eco-village from New Zealand, Kotara Eco-Village. And you can also work in land regeneration, and world really needs people working on land regeneration. This is the project site that I've been to in Jordan. It's greeningthedesertproject.org. Please do check the site. It's a really good example of how you can regenerate a land using permaculture principles. You can volunteer, you can work in aid organizations, in refugee camps, and work with children, and you could make a huge difference with what you know. And you can also get involved in urban permaculture, making the cities more resilient. With this pandemic and with this pandemic lockdowns, we are now more aware that we should make our huge cities more resilient and self-sustaining. And please keep in mind, whatever path you may be dreaming of taking after this course, keep in mind, in Bill Mollison words, permaculture is about design, values, ethics, and the personal responsibility for earth care. And the prime director of permaculture, the only ethical decision is to take responsibility for your own existence and that of your children.
Evren mentioned our Permaculture Design Certification course begins on the 13th of February to the 7th of March, running over the weekends. And this is ideally the 72-hour course that is being taught all over the world. And a lot of people have gone through these stages and have specialized further in topics that they enjoyed the most and wanted to learn more of, because you have to remember, we may learn all the topics and have to still study some of them that we're interested in to be able to go ahead and maybe teach it or practice more of, so that we have enough experience. So if we, look at this image here, it's something that Evren mentioned, if you remember, during the ethics session or the presentation around ethics. She talked about the care for the earth, care for the people, and share the surplus. So that's a really big part of permaculture, is that we're looking at all these three different aspects and working towards that. So we'll be learning a lot about that and how to observe and interact with nature and use that as our learning tool to be able to prepare the landscape to the kind of landscape that we want, that will be regenerative. So these are some of the terms that we will learn throughout this course, and the importance of restoration and regeneration for sustenance, really. So a little bit about myself. So I was, I took my permaculture design certification here in Kenya in 2011 with a renowned facilitator called Warren Brush, who resides in California. And that was the second course that was being run in Kenya, so it was very new at the time. And I was fortunate to be on that course. And so I'm from Nairobi, Kenya itself. So I was driven to community development and just wanted to do something more meaningful. And this really spoke the language of what I was looking for. And so to be able to have then studied with him and then gone ahead and worked or volunteered my time for a year at a children's orphanage where we designed something that Warren Brush had actually designed for us or mapped out, and that we implemented. So that was a really good stage I was at, where I could take the course and then start to utilize what I learned on the field, which was really important to be able to design and learn and observe and then interact with that, rather than kind of just stepping in and teaching people. But I needed to do it for myself, so I spent a year doing that, and we had a lot of like trial and error. So it was very important for my learning, my pathway really. And then I started to work with the Permaculture Research Institute of Kenya that was being formed right around the time that I was volunteering. So I was in touch with the team there because I'd met them on my course. And so the PRI Kenya was essentially the very first to be offering education in East Africa widely, and a lot of people came through our way. And so we started very small. We started with private consultancy work, and then developed an education program that would go and teach, I think, about 6,500 people up until 2018. So that was a big number of people that then went on and started their own projects or development, and then started to teach and volunteer their time in mentorship programs, where they specialize in several different topics. So that was my work between 2012 to 2018, where I managed education program and then led up PRI Kenya between 2016 and 2018, and then exited to start up my own venture. So I still use the same principles within empowerment and training, where I designed my own business here in Nairobi that trains gardeners and individuals and homeowners in some of these principles that we'll go through during the course. And really it's about food production, so to be able to grow a percentage of our food right where we are, and in any space available. And so it's only been 2 years since I've been doing this work here, and I still consult for NGOs and advise on specific development projects that I'd started previously, my previous role at PRA Kenya. So yeah, we went on and taught these people, and I still overlook on certain projects, and I try and work with architects here in terms of bringing green spaces here in Nairobi, because there was a big gap within landscaping. And so I've used some of permaculture and bio-intensive methods or bio-intensive gardening methods to bring into the landscaping market in Nairobi, because there was a huge gap in there. So as Evren mentioned, there are so many possibilities, and there is potential for you really making something out of permaculture and using that in any aspect of your life. It's not really about just the macro level work, but you can really put in a small scale and start to see results. And I think we need more research around that, and how green spaces can really kind of transform an area and an individual and a homestead or a home, and be able to grow at least some of our own food and start to get people to do the same thing, because that's where we're at. With this pandemic, is we saw a lot of interest in people wanting to learn how to grow their own food where they were, and not reliant on just supermarkets. And also kids have been more involved, so that's been a really positive space for us. So within my work at PRI Kenya, we worked with a lot of community projects as well. We transformed a lot of landscapes. We partnered with lots of projects. We worked with different tribes and communities, and that was what really got me more interested and I really wanted to research more about this work. And we co-authored a paper that I could share with you later and try to prove what was going on in Africa or East Africa at different projects, and be able to say that this work was actually really important. So that's a little bit about my work. And so what we'll learn throughout the course, especially in the sessions that I will teach, I will go into soils, water, climate factors, food production, just forest gardening, so how forests, trees, plants play a big role in the ecosystems and maybe reversing climate change a little bit. And then we will learn about why soil regeneration is important. That's something Evren talked about just now, on why soil health is important for a functioning, robust, and regenerative ecoscapes. You can see an image here right before you, where we will also start to observe just around us when we start to learn more, is how bare landscapes are, and how much the sun is eating up all of the nutrients, and we're leaving it so bare that it's just all the moisture is being evaporated. So how do we start to look at soil health, and how do we build from there? Because we can't really talk about regeneration or regenerative systems without talking about soil. So it all begins in the soil. How can we bring back moisture? So when we look at the image on the right there, the regenerative landscape, we're talking about cover crops. So how do we start to put cover crops on the land? How do we start to cover the land so that again, we are transforming the landscape, but we are bringing back moisture? And how do all these crops play a big part in releasing nutrients in the soil? So that's a really important part about quality of our crops, the health of our ecosystem, the health of our land, and the health of our soils. And that's how also that, also helps our health to know where our food's coming from and how it's being grown. And this is a really nice quote here. The big difference between conventional and regenerative agriculture is whether or not you are treating all soil as a living organism that constantly needs to be fed carbon via living plant roots. And so this is really important. Again, if you look at the images, we look at our conventional agriculture, we're seeing such a big lapse. We're seeing how soils are degraded, how much work we have to do with soils, how much this polyculture system we're growing, or this monocrop system that we're growing, one crop, it's really depleting our soils. We're not practicing methods that are bringing back life, and it's just one crop over each season is actually really depleting our landscape. So how do we start to go towards a regenerative landscape of putting many different plants? So we're going to talk about biodiversity. Why is that such an important part of our landscape and ecosystem? And how, again, those living roots from the plants are going to help soil health, and in return give us healthy food and also different kinds of foods. When we get a pest in a one crop, it kind of depletes each and every crop that we have on the land, whereas a polyculture system with diversity, we're actually confusing the bug system in the ecosystem. So that's really important, is that even if one crop has the pest, then you have another crop, and that's food security. So that's something really important. We're talking about food security, is how many crops can we grow. We'll learn about different methods there in healthy food production and a healthy soil. And then how functional plants and forests play a big role in reversing some of the change, the climate crisis that we are enduring right now. So how do trees play a big part? How does that tap moisture back into the soil? What kind of trees are around us? We'll start to understand where we're all at, where are we from, what kind of trees are around us, what can we grow? How will that improve our soil health? How will that improve the ecosystem or the design that we'll talk about in a few minutes? But the trees, how it provides a shade, how intercropping trees with different food crops can also help. Also how trees, there are some certain trees that release nitrogen naturally into the soil. So we'll talk a little bit about this and give you lots of lists of beneficial trees. And then design. Before we go to design, I just want to talk a little bit about even water. Water is a huge problem, that we all face. And so anytime someone comes on the courses, they always talk about water as a huge challenge and how we can tap water. So one of the things that we've seen or we've observed throughout our courses over the years is that when we talk about this, there's a certain topic within permaculture called earthworks. And every time we talk about earthworks and different systems of how to store water, a lot of people are really glued to that topic, because that's the first thing they go and implement, is how to design better garden beds. So in this image here is some of the work we've done here in the city. This is an office space and a home on the right. And we're teaching some of these gardeners on how to design better garden beds where we tap water around the edges. A lot of people, when they see a landscape, it could be a small garden or a large one, they kind of just start to grow on it without actually thinking around pathways or water or how do we move in there? So then we'll end up seeing a lot of soil compaction because we put all this hard work, but then we have to walk around it to harvest. So here we're teaching gardeners on how to create effective spaces. Even, sometimes they'll think these spaces are so small compared to what they have at home, here in Kenya especially. And when they start to see these garden beds within a small area and be able to see how much is grown in there, they start to think around like, wow, we can actually grow so much in a very little space. And so that's being transformative for us. So how they move into the garden and how they're harvested and how the water moves and how do we cover this landscape. So this is one of the areas of slow spread and sink. How do we slow down the water? How do we let it spread naturally and then let it sink so that it stays there for a longer time? So we're looking at all these bountiful resources around us, and we're mimicking nature's patterns, how to slow and spread and sink water through garden beds and proper garden establishment I just mentioned. This is one of the projects we did actually out in a very, very degraded landscape. This is in northern Kenya, and it's an area that has really kind of we'd had to work on for many, many years. This is a Maasai women's group where they couldn't grow much of their food. They were too far away from town. They were so interior that one of the challenges was they couldn't grow anything because there's no water. So it took us a couple of years to really think of something around this, and we held a course with lots of individuals that came and helped. And they dug these gullies where you learn about this during the course. They're called swales, and they're mini trenches. And this was in January that we started to work with them, and then in March our long rains came. And so these images are from March, where we then put some seeds in. And when the rains came, the water was stored, and so there's a big success because you saw the grasses come between April to September. And so that last image is basically a landscape that has just been transformed, and now they grow much of their food. And these are women that were actually surviving on just 11 meals per month. And so that was just mind-blowing to like what they couldn't grow, and that we changed the landscape over time. And it's just, going slow and steady is one of the principles of permaculture, and how little principles from the design principles that you learn will be able to transform landscapes. So it's really important for us to understand what we can do with the knowledge that we have, and how you can transform your own landscape and help people as they start to see. So one of the key things in permaculture we really dive into is also how do you model what you're learning. So if you start slow and steady, just use a principle that you need in your homestead or in your home, and wherever you are in a community, and see how that transforms, and then bring people in to see. That's how, we start to let communities shape. We start to show them. We don't only talk about it. So that's a really huge part of what we've done over the years. And then, this is my own garden here, where I've used lots of permaculture principles and created a food orchard just where I am. This is just the outer part of a parking lot where a lot of people around the compound can actually see. And so you can do it from wherever you are. All these principles are easy to start off with that you need. You don't have to put every principle in practice, but you use what you can and then start to grow from there. So these images, this was an image I started, the first one is I started that a few years ago, and I had to rebuild my soil because my soil health there was really poor. And I used all the plants to like kind of be the medicinal, they were the medicine for the soils, a very natural way of kind of bringing soils back. So I used those roots for really releasing enough nutrients. And now I live in a very thriving, or I step out and I'm in a thriving ecoscape because I get to come to this food orchard and I'm able to pick up some of my own produce or have flowers and pollinators. And so this is just in an urban area, and many of us are actually in an urban area space, those that are going to be taking this course. So we will be diving to so many different topics to get you to this place where you will also have an enjoyable place to work from, go to every day once you start implementing that. If we go back to design, that's something that Evren also mentions, that we'll go to different design aspects of sector analysis, to zoning, so mapping out where you are. So we'll learn how to sketch base maps. So, the word design brings to mind an intentionality behind what we do as permaculture practitioners. We are called to make informed decisions about how we're going to alter the landscape. So it's really about where are we working from? What are our needs list? So we'll be able to now create a needs list for where we are from what we're learning, and then be able to map it all out and see what we need, and then walk and talk around your landscape. So when you're, after the sessions, you'll be able to walk around your own landscape and sort of put down all the different needs that you require to set it up? What will you implement? And then go through, you can work together as one, see, are these some of the things that you need? Is it a priority? If not, does it really need to be there? Can it be an eventual plan? So it's really just starting small, and learning where different elements will kind of, where you will place different elements, where different things will go. And then remember that as much as it's permanent agriculture with permaculture, the two coined words there, permanent agriculture, it doesn't mean that the design is permanent. It means that you're evolving with what you're seeing. It just means that you're designing for resilience, and you're designing for restoration. But remember that the design can keep changing. So that stuff we will work toward. So we'll be learning how to, hand sketch. You don't have to use a very fancy software, but you can start to learn how to sketch by hand and what you're seeing, and create base maps and place your different elements and be able to work together to see if this is a feasible design for you. And remember, every design is very different from each other. You don't have, one design is not tailor-made for everyone. Your designs will be different. So even when we worked with farmers here, we've had to remind them that their design will not be the same. My neighbor's design will not be the same as mine, because our needs are different. So that's actually the unique, I guess that's what's unique about permaculture, is that the designs are different, and it's very aesthetic as well. But that aesthetic quality to the design is also a functional property of design. So we're using different like edges and patterns, and why it looks really nice, but there's a reason why we design that way, is because you will have more production. So permaculture design from an aerial view actually looks very aesthetic and very beautiful, but there's also a reason as to why it looks like that, and why you can make it look like that, and how transformative a place can become. So you learn a lot of different methods, and we'll be sharing with you images and work that we've done in the past. Even Evren has just shown you some pictures of some of the work that she's been a part of, where people that she knows have done really good work. And we'll be sharing that with you, and you can share with us on what you're learning and any questions that you have. So in a nutshell, we'll be gaining a deeper understanding of the climate factors, as we talked about, soils and plant health, trees and plants, water, and the ecological land design, and then tropical climates and much more. So a lot of us are maybe in the tropics as well, so we learn about the tropics and the temperate climate that we're in. What will work? How do we start to gain a deeper understanding in that aspect, and start to design for that? So these are some of the sessions that I will be facilitating during this course. And ultimately, we want to go from a very degenerative landscape where we are, to a very regenerative landscape, to where we need to be, and then a sustainable when we need to get there. So how do we get there? How will all these principles play a big part in getting to that space? So it's important to know that these topics are really useful, and for each context will be very different, and not all of them will be used for all of you as well. You learn how to use the ones that work for you, and then be able to document some of these observations that you're making throughout your learning pathway that we will be supporting you toward. So, these are some of the lists between a degenerative agriculture versus a regenerative agriculture. So I could share this with you later, but these are some of the key topics that will come throughout the course, throughout the sessions, and how we will use less of the degenerative practices towards a more natural regenerative way of doing things, and change the landscapes so that we're able to practice for better and improve our own health of the ecosystem, and our own health, and towards this regenerative ecosystem. So the basic needs for human survival are fresh water and food. The basic need for fresh water and food is healthy soil. So let's rebuild our soil. That's the most important topic. And also, a lot of people dive into this topic because they start to learn about the biological processes in soil, and it's really fun to understand soil and what is beneath the surface of the soil, and how to read soils. So it's going to be really interactive and engaging. This is another project I was part of. So when I talked about volunteering for a year, this was a space. It was a children's home here in Kenya, where I spent a year after my course, and the very first image there was what it looked like, and it was actually a dumping ground before we moved in there. And then we started to use the design principles and start to transform it. And you can see the grasses are back, and then we use these different patterns, and we got so much production, and the children's home was able to actually eat a lot of their food from there. And we had a feeding program. A lot of community members would come around there and actually see the project. And so that's what it turned into with many different hands. So they're in various stages between 2011 to 2015. The one thing that frustrates me in this is sometimes around leadership, is that you can have you can be intentional and go there with the right, intentions. But, when you leave a project, it's like, who's going to take over and help that restoration process? And unfortunately, this site doesn't actually look like that anymore. And I don't want to be negative about it, but I think we have to know that when we're doing something, that the people that will come after will really look after it, because this project we took so much time to get here. And then when I kind of started working elsewhere, because I only volunteered, it wasn't really my project, but the people there didn't take care of this project. And so it doesn't really look like this anymore. However, there was just so many trees there that's the positive aspect of it, with how many trees that we put about 500 different fruit trees in there, and they're still thriving, but the design is not the same anymore. And sometimes we have to talk a little bit about leadership around community development, is that we have to make sure that we have a plan set ahead. We get excited to start these projects, put so much energy in there, and then in the long term, it's not looked after, and that really kind of also depletes our own health. And it's like, so we have to remember that for something to be resilient, we must have a plan ahead and not let it go down the drain, when you put so much energy in. So this is a really important project for me, and lots of lessons learned, and that, from a transformative place, it's now not that. But that's not the end of it. We have so much more to do and so much more to give, and I hope that this course will teach you that, and you will be able to take this knowledge and transform your own landscapes and teach people how to use these principles as you're also implementing this. So just start, go small and steady is one of the principles of permaculture that you will come across. And we are here to support you in your learning pathway. And we hope that many of you will join the course, and that we will be interacting with you during that time. Thank you very much.